Benedicite Dominus, and welcome to question 165 of the secundae of the Summa Theologica. This topic is the temptation of Adam and Eve, and I am Dr. Thibault. So we are looking at the potential parts of temperance. I feel like I've said that many times at this point. We are looking at the particular part of temperance, which is modesty, and within modesty is the virtue of humility, and the contrary vice associated with humility is pride. And when we're covering pride, St. Thomas took the time to also spend 3 questions on Adam and Eve and the sin of pride in Adam and Eve. So we are in the last of those sections. Some of them have been somewhat long, and this one is the shortest of the 3, so I will not delay any further. So the first question is it fitting for man to be tempted by the devil, as happened in the book of Genesis, chapter 3? St. Thomas says, I'll just read this short section, God's wisdom orders all things sweetly, inasmuch as his providence appoints to each one that which is befitting it according to its nature. So God doesn't allow anything to be done not without providence and according to its nature. St. Thomas also uses a line from Sirach that until something has been tested, you don't know what it is. That's also quite appropriate. We hardly use the book of Sirach anymore, but St. Thomas's Summa is filled with the book of Sirach, and the Protestants don't use it at all. Martin Luther took it out of their Bible, the Protestant Bible. But St. Thomas has a lot of Sirach. I love the book of Sirach, so I'm glad that he likes it too. And Pseudo-Dionysius he uses a lot as well, and I'm a big fan of Pseudo-Dionysius. So St. Thomas and I, we like the same people. He's much more of an Augustinian scholar than I'll ever be, though. St. Augustine seems to have written everything on everything. I'm not sure how anyone can really have him down, but St. Thomas did a good job. So is it befitting for Adam and Eve to be tempted? Yes, or it wouldn't have happened. God wouldn't have allowed their temptation if it wasn't fitting. Now, some very interesting things here. That's something you'll never hear preached probably at a Sunday Mass, but God allows man in a state of innocence to be tempted by the devil and to be helped by the angels. That image of the devil on one shoulder and the angel on another shoulder is perfectly in line with question 165 of the secundae. God doesn't allow the devil to tempt without that extra help on the part of the heavenly host. But God knew, even with this temptation in the state of innocence, that man could fall. That was a possibility. But he also knew that man could resist the tempter with free will. So Adam was absolutely free, and beyond that, more free than you and me. Right? We have free will, but we are burdened with concupiscence, right? We are burdened with temptations and appetites that Adam and Eve didn't have because they existed before the fall. They were in a state of innocence. They didn't have bad habits, right? We're born into a world of bad habits. We already have bad habits. If you're listening to me here, you have gotten to the point that you are old enough to have established bad habits. Adam and Eve presumably were adults. They had no bad habits, right? They were in a state of innocence. Therefore, there was no habit. They weren't more likely, right? If you were a smoker, you're more likely to smoke another cigarette because you're a smoker. You already have that habit. If you're a liar, you're more likely to lie. We all have these habits and habituses, right? Adam and Eve had no habits, right? If they had any habit, it was a virtue, because that's how God made them. So Adam and Eve were really free, unlike us who are kind of free, right? We're free to a degree. Adam and Eve were absolutely free in their state of innocence. Therefore, their ability to say yes to God and no to the serpent was real freedom, absolute freedom. And they chose the serpent. That's the fall, right? That's the fall. Now, how was their manner in order of temptation? Now, St. Thomas here gets very allegorical. And, if you read all of the objections and all of the responses to the objections, you can't help to be a little bit offended with a modern day sensibility to you, because it just seems like such a negative view of women. And some of this is coming from Aristotelian views. The ancient Greeks were not particularly favorable to women. You look at Aristotle and Plato, there's more of a interest in young men than there is of seeing and their students, rather than to think that their wife is their equal. You never get the sense that Plato's wife is his equal, or Socrates. It's a fairly negative view of women as irrational and emotional, and for the production of children. It's just built into their bias. But let's not get bogged down with that, and let's look more at kind of what he's trying to say allegorically, which is more important. He uses St. Augustine in the contra-argument to lay out this argument. First, there was the serpent, which dealt with the concupiscible, the sin of sensuality. I think serpents have been images of sensuality for a while. And just take it. You'll enjoy it. It's easy. Just bite, right? It's not even an irascibility, something difficult. It's something easy. Pick and bite. Pick and eat is the concupiscible. Next is, he says, it went to the woman, from the serpent to the woman, which was lower reason, which of course doesn't sound very favorable to women, right? But if you break down what the ancients meant by lower and higher reason, we're really talking about left brain and right brain, which is actually something you can still find self-help books and stuff about today, right? This is still actually relevant, the left brain and right brain. The left brain is more creative. It's more interested in language. It's more the arts and culture, the humanities. And then there's the left brain, which is more mathematical, scientific, logical. I think there is some sense that men have more of a left brain and women have more of a right brain. Just looking at career choices that people go into, women go into more relational fields versus men go into more technical fields. People can make the argument that culture says something about that, but there does seem to be something about the sexes that there is a difference, right? There is a difference between men and women. It's not much of a sexual differentiation, but there is a sexual differentiation between primates and humans are primates. So there is that within the mind. So it goes from the sensual to the emotions to the logical, right? So forget men and women, but this is within the story. So the story unfolds a mode, right? A way of dealing with temptation, right? It starts with sensual, moves to the emotional, and then it gets confirmed by the logical. So it makes some sense. So the other one St. Thomas looks at is that it's how do we get tempted, right? These are the deeper psychological questions that St. Thomas is dealing with, and he's using scriptures and stories and virtues in order to unfold this. So don't get caught up in the story as much as trying to figure out what he's talking about. First, there is the intellectual part of the temptation of the story of the serpent. Promising divine likeness and knowledge. right? The tree of knowledge. There's the intellectual side, and then there's the sensible side, or again, kind of the emotional side. How does Adam get tempted? Well, the woman, right? So there's you have the logical element, right? Divine knowledge. Then you have the woman saying, "Hey, Adam, try some of this," and this is also within his own species. So you have the rational soul involved in Eve, because she's a human, so she has a rational soul, right? So you have the rational soul, the same species. And then you have, is partially the sensible comes from the serpent. He says partially, repeatedly. I see a spelling mistake, but ignore the spelling mistake. Partially repeated is the serpent, which is under the genus of animal. So Adam shares that with the serpent, that the serpent is also an animal. So you have the rational soul, and now you have the animate soul. And then you have the eating of the fruit, the tree. Now you have the proximate genus, which is the vegetative soul. So we have the rational soul, the animate soul, and the vegetative soul, right? The three parts of the soul within the human person, right? Our vegetative soul, we have an animate soul, and we have a rational soul. So all of that is included within the story. So St. Thomas here is using, and St. Augustine, they're using the story to really unfold the psychology of temptation. You could go into a bit more, but I think he goes into it more in other questions, the human psychology, but just something interesting. I also think I think it's a response to objection 4. St. Thomas goes into a section about, well, is the snake really a snake? I didn't give it a slide, but I think that's an interesting question if you think the snake is a snake. Often the snake is really depicted as, it's just the devil, right? It's the manifestation of the devil himself. But then you do get some, the question of like, well, can snakes talk? Well, snakes can't talk. And then also the curse of the snake. You will go forth on your belly eating dust, right? And you will snap at her heel, and she will step on your head, crush your head. This image, well, is it a snake or not a snake? The image, St. Thomas has an interesting answer. He says, well, animals can be used by the angels and the devils. Look at Balaam's ass, for example, right? Go back to the story of Balaam. An angel spoke to Balaam through the donkey, right? So angels and demons can use animals to speak to people, and they're not really speaking. They're speaking to their mind, but they're manifested through the animal. It's not, they don't have the vocal cords to speak. You're speaking into their mind, but you're perceiving it as coming from the animal, because the animals in some way has been possessed, right? In some way. So it's not actually a talking donkey, and it's not a talking snake, but it appears that way to the person. And secondly, the animal is. St. Thomas is saying the animal's possessed. So was there a serpent in the garden? Yes, there was a serpent in the garden. It was possessed, a possessed serpent. Now, how about the curse? This poor cursed serpent. They got cursed, and while they were possessed, they didn't even choose to do anything. Well, the curse is really to the devil. It's not really to the snake. It's the curse is to the devil, and it's metaphorical. It's imagery. Going forth on your belly, right? You will be shamed. You will be low. You will be brought down. You will eat dirt, right? This isn't literal, and we know this because snakes don't eat dirt either, right? Worms eat dirt, right? But not snakes. So this is metaphorical, right? It's a metaphorical curse of the devil, not the snake itself. Maybe that's interesting to no one, but I find those things, little chunks thrown in there, as interesting, because those are the types of questions that maybe you ask when you're new. The first time you hear the story, or a little kid hears a story for the first time. These they ask those types of questions, and we don't have an answer. But St. Thomas tried to answer them, which I think is interesting. So in conclusion, man's temptation was fitting, otherwise God wouldn't have allowed it. And really, Adam, you can feel bad for Adam and Eve, but really, in their state of innocence, they chose it. They really chose it. They didn't, they could have much more easily turned it down than even you or me could have, because of their state of innocence. And the manner of the temptation was fitting, in that it really shows that this is the story of all people. It's a story of temptation, but it's a story of our temptation as well, and it's didactic, right? It's a teaching tool as well, and it aims us towards that humility, right? Which is the goal of these stories of pride, is to point us towards the virtue, which is humility and temperance. So next we will move to studiousness, which is another, we did humility, which was quite long, and now we move on to studiousness, which is another part of modesty, part of temperance. Okay.